Hey, Scott Jordan and Mark Warner here for Jancast number 146. Is that number right? 46, right? Yep. For Thursday, May 18th. It's already in the middle of May. I don't know, 2023, but we got a great show today because you know what happened 3 years and 2 months ago?
3 years, 2 months. It's so hard to believe.
Yep. So it's official as of last week on May 11th. The Department of Health and Human Services, the fondly liked HHS, declared under Section 319 of the Public Health Service Act that the whole thing, the COVID emergency, is over. There we go. Everything's back to normal.
Well, the interesting thing, Scott, is it's officially over now, and we're all looking at the start time as March 2020 because here in the U.S. we went through the lockdown and the airline shutdown and all that, but obviously it started sooner than that. It actually started back in December of 2019 in Wuhan, China. And the interesting part there, Scott, a month before I was in Beijing, which is 50 clicks outside of Wuhan, and doing a training class on behalf of the ISSA, and got out of there obviously in time to avoid the lockdown that they went through. And essentially December and January, they were having their issues there. They couldn't control it, so it took till March for the rest of the world to say whoa and shut it all down. And do you remember where you were in March of 2020?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I was people that listen to the show on a regular basis, and thank you for all those people that listen to the show, by the way. I got some nice comments this morning about how they like our program. But yeah, my daughter and I were in Costa Rica surfing, and this was in February, and the second week of February, and we started seeing stuff because we were posting emails and stuff like that from down there. Everybody else is at this place. It's a small little location down there, and most people are on vacation, so and it's not like you have television. This place doesn't have television to watch the nightly news, so nobody knew what was going on. So Nikki and I are working away in the middle of the day, sending all these emails and posts and stuff, and people kept walking by going, why are you guys working? It's like, what's going on? And we're like, you have no idea what's going on. And obviously we had no idea what was going on either. So we got out of there 2 weeks before the whole world shut down, pretty much the same kind of timing that you had, because you asked for more trouble to go to someplace in the US, right? Just before.
Well, yeah, January of 2020, I was doing a training event in Portland, Oregon. So when you hear about the first occurrence being documented in Seattle, Washington, it's kind of like, wow, that's kind of weird. That's spooky weird. It's kind of like feeling like it was chasing me.
Yeah.
We were kind of joking about it earlier. It's kind of like being on vacation on a beach and then finding out that a week after you left, they had a tidal wave and, it washed away everything away. You're like, well, it was pretty nice when I was there. So I can say that about Beijing and about Portland. It was pretty nice when I was there. It's no problem. But yeah, my wife was saying that I'm probably very lucky I got out of Beijing when I did, because things were starting, probably, as you and I know, the way infectious diseases work. There might have been some things happening earlier than their first notification to the world, which was 12/12/19. But obviously people have had to have gotten sick, and ground zero, patient one, might have been weeks before that.
In my case, people were saying, well, you could have gotten stuck there. That would have been fantastic. You could have been surfing every day. Well, no, you remember how crazy it was back then. So you're in the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and they're not letting people go in the water because they're afraid of transmission. So you couldn't even go to the beach. So you're stuck in paradise, but you can't go to the beach, and you can't even go to people would go out like before the sun came up, first thing in the morning, and then there'd be police guys waiting for them on the beach when they come in, when the sun came up. I mean, some pretty crazy stuff was going on at the beginning of it, because nobody had any idea what was happening, right? I mean, it was all kind of reactionary stuff because nobody had planned ahead for it, obviously. Yeah.
Well, the U.S. kind of did its approach and went after masking and all that, because obviously there was no vaccines, there were
Yeah.
no boosters, there was no idea of how to control it. But the United States didn't do what China ended up doing. They went through a complete lockdown,
Yeah.
locks and bars on people's doors, and and
Yeah.
they couldn't get food. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, the world went through some crazy times, and we were all part of it.
Well, I remember it was really easy getting to work because there was no traffic on the roads. And we were essential business, so we were open at at the very beginning there when everything was shut down. I'd drive on, we have a road called the Blue Route down here, which you and I travel on every day, and it was absolutely nobody on it. I mean, it didn't matter what time of day. It was like, wow, this is fantastic. I can get to work in like 10 minutes, in retrospect. But so I reported, for those of you listening to Jancast and not familiar, we put out a thing called the Sunday Sales Blast every week. It's a weekly email that goes out, and it's related to Jansen industry selling and stuff like that. So when I read the news about the fact that the epidemic thing was over, we did a little bit of publicizing the differences of what's going on. And, there's like 4 or 5 major things that kind of went through that has changed selling and how we go to market considerably. And you're the sales manager, Mark. I mean, you've seen it more than I have, right?
Absolutely. Well, in the very beginning, of course, nobody wanted to have a face-to-face event.
Yeah.
So there was too much fear of other human beings. Think about that statement. Like,
Yeah.
wow. But so we all had to shift gears. Obviously, people still needed things. They still needed to source things. We had to keep providing things. So everything went digital. All of a sudden, I mean, Zoom meant something completely different in 2019. I think it was like the mantra for Mazda, Zoom, Zoom, and then all of a sudden 2020 came along and Zoom, now we're Zooming, and it's, it became a brand new word. Now it's commonplace.
Yeah.
But that's what we were doing back then. We were doing go-to meetings and webinars. And,
remote working and selling. Now we're so into it that it's like, well, I don't want to get on. What's Microsoft's one?
Teams.
Teams. I don't want to use Teams. I prefer Zoom. It's like, so you have like your preferences is like, oh man, I got a meeting. I got to figure out how to install that thing. Can't we just do Zoom? It's like amazing, the transformation. It's like nobody had any idea what they're doing. And then obviously we've got our game pretty dialed up here with all the videos that we do and everything else, but you still have people with fans going over their head, and stuff like that. Or they're like, they have a light behind them, so they're like a silhouette and you can't see them. I mean, most people have learned, but yeah.
My favorite part is when people go,
and everybody in the group goes,
"Hey, you're muted."
Good point. Yeah. So we got all this remote working and selling's happening. I don't think any of this stuff's going to necessarily change. I guess the good news is the supply chain has gotten caught up, because I used to do, before you came back to being national sales manager, I started doing these videos to fill our customers in on, hey, we don't have any bottles, or no, we don't have quad, we don't have this. It was good info that we were putting out there, but thank God the prices all went through the roof and they haven't come down much. But the supply chain thing and everything else, and then just the general consensus on safety. Yeah.
Well, business in general. Like, you think about where the trends were going in 2019, everybody was looking at it as a global market and as a global supply chain, and outsourcing both labor or outsourcing for parts and components. Look what happened in Detroit. It's a U.S. American-made car they couldn't build because they were bringing in imported electronics from China. And so it shut down production. And, I think what shifted is everybody started to think, well, this is sketchy. This could happen again. It happened once, means it can happen again.
Yeah.
And so everybody's kind of rethinking their own supply chains. And what I'm seeing a lot, Scott, is a lot of people heavily promoting that they're, built in the USA, made in the USA kind of thing, which to me has a secondary meaning going beyond the pride of it being an American-made product. But it also has that innuendo that we're not going to be impacted by
Yeah.
global supply chain issues like what happened in 2020. So that's a shift in the way the whole world operates, not just our world.
Yeah.
And everybody's kind of looking to have more localized sourcing.
Hmm.
So that changed a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
So
remember the stories we heard about people bringing containers in from China and they were being held hostage
Yeah.
like 4 miles off the coast of LA? And they had to like write like cash bankers checks for like
Yeah.
$30,000 to get them to release their containers so that they could be unloaded at the port. I mean, there was some crazy stories. There'll probably be some movies about that someday.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's reflect on a couple things. That kind of came out of the whole thing. So we got the big one for me, which we still don't really feel that good about, is electrostatic sprayers. And the distributors that are listening in on this are probably going, yeah, I got like 1,000 back here in the warehouse in case you want any, because it's like the market completely shifted on that. And quite honestly, we don't think they work anyway, or they have very limited qualities. Everybody kind of got off of that. Nobody's talking about them anymore because I guess they can't even give them away. But that was a big one at the time, right? I mean,
I've heard distributors talk about the fact that they're trying to blow out inventory to free up cash flow and blowing them out at $50 a piece. I mean, they were $1,000, back in the day. So the interesting thing is I think that the whole issue of electrostatic sprayers suffered from over embellishment of what their capabilities were. I mean, obviously it's an electric pressurized system that puts out a nice uniform spray.
Yes.
Far more uniform than a trigger sprayer might, right?
Yeah.
So from that aspect, it was very valid. And then that's really where they should have hung their hat. But when they started talking about electrostatic wrapping around surfaces, they were playing on the fact that electrostatic painting has been around forever, and they do that with paint. But that's done with a lot more voltage, and it's done with grounding wires on the destination, and positive, heavy positive charge going into the paint. That's how the wrap happens. Well, you can't ground like the room kind of thing.
You have to haul around. You have to haul around a marine battery. So when you're cleaning the teacher's office, you hook the connection up to the chair with the marine battery, fire that baby up, and then you spray it.
Yeah, I can see that. Sure. But some of them had some serious batteries on them. I remember one that was quite shocking.
Yes, yeah. Like there was like a switch in the back, but the switch on this side, if you touched it, it would like, oh my God. It was getting electrostaticking me. Yeah. But a couple of other good things is the dwell times on the disinfectants. It's amazing how they made improvements. And it started out at 10 minutes, and now we're down to a lot of stuff's down to like 30 seconds or a minute, right?
Well, linked into that, we talked about this before, that in 2019 and prior, people didn't even know what dwell time was. They were like, wait, what? I got to let it sit. And it's kind of like, and that's changed a lot in the last 3 years. People definitely get the idea that you've got to pre-clean and have a stay wet time.
What, you have to pre-clean?
Well,
that was another one, right?
Exactly. People are like, well, I thought I could just walk in and wave the magic wand around, and people were doing that. And it's a term that was developed from that. They started calling it hygiene theater, where people were actually just spraying things on dirty surfaces, which is just breaks every rule there is in disinfection. But they were doing it to try to give them a false sense of security, bring them back to the stadiums and the arenas and the entertainment.
The drone deployment of spraying disinfectant in stadiums, that was a good one. It's like, oh, okay, so you're not going to clean any of those seats? So you're just going to fly around and spray stuff? Like, well.
They went beyond that. Like in China, I remember seeing pictures of drones spraying streets, spraying sidewalks. And didn't we see spray booths somewhere where workers had to walk through this spray booth and get like hosed off with bleach before they could walk in?
There was somebody on the internet in Texas that set up a booth at their house. So when their husband got home, he'd have to walk through the spray, and you'd get sprayed with I don't know what. I have no idea what he was getting sprayed with, but that was how
It can't be
crazy it was.
good. Yeah, it
Yeah,
can't be good.
spraying your vegetables and all that. But I got to give EPA credit. They did put in place, even though it was prior to COVID, the emerging pathogen protocol, which allowed them allowed you to at least make a claim, a legitimate claim, without it being on your label. So that was pretty innovative on EPA's part to kind of keep up with it, because we have all those different lists we have now, the N list, the P list, all those. That all came out of there, right?
Well, what I like about the emerging pathogen, because it's so logical, is as long as you can document you can kill something known to be harder to kill.
Yeah.
It was easy to assume that it would kill things easier to kill.
Yeah.
And that's pretty logical. And we never used to be able to really make that claim. And the emerging pathogens kind of validated that concept that if it's a tuberculocidal, which is one of the more difficult things to kill, it's pretty safe to assume it's going to go after things as easy to kill as an enveloped virus, which is one of the simplest things to kill. So I think that actually was a great improvement in the way the EPA programs worked.
Yeah, I'm surprised they were able to actually get that kind of working as well as it seemed to work. So
now there was also the claims where all you got to do is like spray it one time real quick and it would be good for the next 7 years. And if somebody sneezed on it or died on it with Ebola, no matter what happened, you couldn't get sick. It was permanent treatments on surfaces.
Yeah, we got to give the salesperson credit that sold Southwest Airlines, and we reported this. Remember, we created a whole website, germwashing.com, specifically for calling out all these false claims. But back when it was really going hot and heavy, people were making ridiculous claims about stuff. So somebody sold Southwest on the idea that you could just spray all the seats in the airplane and it would have a 7-day residual claim against who knows what. And then United followed Southwest and did the same claim. And we take personal responsibility for getting those two things shut down, because we publicized it. I wrote specifically to Southwest to start with on Twitter, because that was kind of the easy way to get through to people. Like, you guys are making false claims, you're going to get in a lot of trouble. So somebody, I guess, finally realized, hey, maybe we should stop doing that. But that's on germ washing as well. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is it took a long time. Like, we were wondering, how are people getting away with this?
Yeah.
How long are they going to get away with this? How long is the government going to let them do that? And during the last 12 months, the largest EPA fine ever levied by the EPA on anybody at over $2 million, because a company was making claims that were not validated by the EPA. They did not have their own EPA number, and you can't sell a disinfectant in the United States without an EPA number. And they were minor detail. But there is one claim that was totally underrated, and I have embraced it in my soul, that if I drink a Corona before I go to bed every night, I don't have to worry about catching COVID.
Yes, our largest viewed show in the history of the Bowling Company is over 40,000 views on that. Maybe it might be 50 by now, but I think it had something to do with me holding up the Corona.
A bottle of Corona.
Yeah. That and the senator that said he thought Listerine killed COVID as well. That didn't go over very well, but at least things have calmed down. So I'm going to post below the video up on the website, a great site if you want to review the history. CDC has a thing called Museum Timeline of COVID-19 that's really good. So it's kind of, obviously everybody's been through a whole lot of pretty bad stuff over the years, the few years since everything started, but it's nice that we're kind of coming out of it now, and we've kind of learned a lot from it as well, right?
Well, yeah. We're now the survivors.
Yeah.
So
till the next one. Well, on that note, that's a positive note, I guess, right?
Yeah.
On that note, went over a little on time, but I thought it was very interesting to reflect on 3 years and 2 months since it started, and man, it was a fast 3 years, huh?
At times fast, at times slow, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, stay
Yeah.
tuned for future shows, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the great comments we get. People's like, I love your podcast and all that. The numbers don't show on our stats because there's something wrong with YouTube's algorithm as far as. So I know we're getting hundreds of views more than stuff showing, but we appreciate the comments back and hope you enjoyed the show.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, see y'all.